Bitter rivals don't have to wait to see each other in 2025. Seahawks 49ers round one at Lumen Field coming up on Sunday. What are some of the key storylines that we should be watching headed into this latest rivalry matchup? We're breaking it all down here on Crossover Thursday. Locked on Seahawks, locked on 49ers.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greeting 12s and 49ers faithful. It's time for our first Crossover Thursday of the 2025 season. I'm Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. Glad to be joined by Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers. And we don't have to wait for the rivalry to rekindle this year. First time in a while that the Seahawks and 49ers battle in week one at Lumen Field. We'll be diving into key storylines, the matchups to watch, keys to victory, and of course, predictions in a jam-packed first Crossover Thursday episode of the year. Brought your way by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Brian, it has really been a one-sided series between these two teams the last 3 years. But with that said, the Seattle Seahawks did finally snap their 5-game losing streak in Santa Clara last year. Now they're hoping to snap a losing streak to the 49ers at Lumen Field. Used to dominate this series at home, and that has changed, much like their home games in general the last few years. It's really been a struggle for the Seahawks to win in front of the 12s. And the 49ers fans showing up has been a big part of that. But this is going to be a new chapter in the series in the sense there's a lot of new players on both these teams, particularly for the 49ers on the defensive side of the football. A lot of big-name players gone, a number of guys cut, players leaving in free agency. And with that, you've got a ton of rookies, a lot of young guys that haven't played very many snaps. They're going to be counted on to play significant snaps early, and they get a significant road test right out of the gate playing at Lumen Field.
Yeah, it used to be a house of horrors for the 49ers there, and I still kudos to the folks that designed that stadium. You got the basically two amphitheaters facing at each other, and that place gets loud. I just saw some of the numbers that it might be something like 53% 49ers fans that are buying tickets for this one on Sunday on the road. So Niners fans showing up, excited about the season. And I'm excited too. I think the Seattle Seahawks and the 49ers are two interesting teams because there's enough changeover and enough question to not quite know exactly what these two teams are going to look like. And I think we're going to get a lot of answers on Sunday. And yeah, the biggest storyline for the 49ers is how many rookies play. We still don't know exactly what that rotation is even going to be. It's been a while since you could sit here in week one and for a guy who covers a football team as close as I do and not quite know exactly who the starters are going to be at 2-3 positions on the defensive side of the ball. And even if it's not the rookies starting, it's going to be a heavy rotation of some young players. They drafted 5 straight rookies on the defensive side of the ball. And for those Seahawks fans that might be listening and don't quite remember how much changeover there was, Dre Greenlaw gone, Talanoa Hufanga is gone. Other players that might not have had as big a role in recent history with the 49ers, but Javon Hargrave was a big free agent addition a couple of years ago. He's gone. Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd. These guys are all starting defensive players that are on the way out. The Niners replaced them with rookies on the roster. Didn't spend any money in free agency to replace these guys. So Kyle Shanahan talked about the safety spot. Jason Pinnock was brought over from Robert Saleh, familiar with him and in his days with the New York Jets. And he's probably going to be one of the starters there. And it's either the holdover in Jair Brown or rookie 5th rounder, Marcus Siegel, who's going to start at the other safety spot for the 49ers. I would imagine one of the either 2nd or 4th round defensive tackles. Feels like CJ West, the 4th rounder out of Indiana, was a little bit ahead of the 2nd rounder, Alfred Collins, throughout camp, but CJ West had a little bit of an injury as well. So will West be the starter next to potentially Jordan Elliott on the defensive line? Will Alfred Collins be a starter? Will they start 2 rookies at defensive tackle? I can't imagine they would do that, but it's a possibility because the only holdovers on the defensive line, the 2 veterans are Jordan Elliott and Kalia Davis. And Kalia Davis hasn't played a whole lot of football himself and was a former 6th round pick. So even if he does start in week 1, I think it won't be too long before either Collins or CJ West takes over one of those starting roles on the 49ers defensive line. And we know that even though he was banged up for the preseason, their first rounder, number 11 overall, Michael Williams out of Georgia, is going to start at that defensive end spot across from Nick Bosa and probably move inside no matter who's starting at defensive tackle and get a little rush from inside when Bryce Huff, the free agent addition, comes in and rushes off the edge on third downs. And that is not counting Nick Martin, who might have a little bit of a role at linebacker, third-round linebacker, and one of the other rookie starters that I think we already know is going to start is Upton Stout. He's only 5'8", but he plays a lot bigger, and he is going to be the nickel corner for the San Francisco 49ers. So that's a lot of change for a team that expects to be really good, to have that many young players and unknown starters going into week one. We're just a couple of days out, and I'm still not sure who's going to roll out there on the first snap.
Yeah, the 49ers have all that youth, all those changes on defense, and then the Seahawks underwent significant personnel changes on the offensive side of the football. They've got a new quarterback in Sam Darnold, who obviously 49er fans are familiar with, even though he was a backup his 1 year there, did play some meaningful snaps late in the season. Got to see what he could do. He's now being entrusted to run Clint Kubiak's offense. They've got a couple new offensive linemen, Gray Zabel being the most notable one. They've added to the receiver room with DK Metcalf being gone, Tyler Lockett being gone. In comes Cooper Kupp. They love Torrey Horton, their 5th-round pick out of Colorado State. So this is really a fascinating offense versus defense matchup because both these teams have undergone major changes there. But on the flip side, the Seahawks, I think the one thing that they've really got going for them going into this game is that on defense, they pretty much got everybody back, and they've added to that group. 13 to the 14 players who got the most snaps on that side of the ball last year and were on this team when they were a top 5 scoring defense in the last 8 games last season. They're back. 13 of those 14 guys are back. And then they add Nick Emanwari in the draft. They bring in DeMarcus Lawrence in free agency. They think there's a chance that Uchenna Nwosu is going to be ready to play potentially on Sunday, coming off knee surgery. There's a chance that they could have all hands on deck with some of these new guys being added on that side of the football. And San Francisco, on the flip side on offense, they underwent plenty of changes on that side of the ball going into this game as well.
The offense is the thing that's going to have to carry the 49ers, I think, early in the season. And the Niners had a really weird offseason where, last year they were number 32, looking at the metric from, I don't remember if it was PFF or NFL or ESPN stats. I can't remember who had the stat, but it was adjusted games missed. The 49ers last year were 32nd in the NFL. They were hurt the most by injuries in the entire league. And so having Christian McCaffrey healthy, George Kittle was pretty healthy all year long, as was the quarterback in Brock Purdy, who's newly minted and paid a lot of money to be able to run an offense that should be able to carry the team for a short period of time until you start to really feel like you know who your starters are on defense and get that thing going. So from that standpoint, even though there was a lot of injuries in camp, they've really gotten healthy at the right time. Juwan Jennings showed up as well. So you got the first rounder from last year and Ricky Pearsall with Juwan Jennings, even though Brandon Ayuk is going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks or so, probably Halloween-ish, he'll be back. They brought in Demarcus Robinson, who is suspended for the first 3 games of the season. So wide receivers is an interesting group of veterans that they brought in off the street to bring in reinforcements, but then the 2 homegrown guys in Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall as the starters. But let's be honest, Kyle Shanahan wants to run the football. The offensive line is mostly back from last year. Ben Barch is the new starter all year at left guard, but he started at the end of last year too. So really, they brought back all 5 offensive linemen. And so if they're able to run the ball and McCaffrey's healthy, it's going to be a heavy dose of McCaffrey. They're going to throw the ball to him. They're going to throw the ball to Kittle. And it's going to be a very similar 49ers offense that I think Seahawks fans are used to seeing.
There's a lot of matchups that we're going to be diving into here with all these newcomers. And it's going to be different because you and I, we've been doing this for a number of years, and it's always been centered around a lot of the same guys. But there's no DK Metcalf. There's no Javon Hargrave. There's no Afanga. I mean, there's so many players that we talked a lot about over the years that we won't be mentioning anymore. And there's a lot of replacements taking place of their spot in the lineup. So we're going to have some different discussions coming up when we look at some key matchups going into this game, but we'll be talking Seahawks offense, 49ers defense, vice versa, maybe even some special teams matchups thrown in there. We'll be getting to that coming up next here on Crossover Thursday. This episode is brought your way by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on who delivered. Powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Seahawks, Cody White delivered in a big way in the preseason finale, even though the Packers already had the win. In the fourth quarter, White came up with a couple big catches, including a nice touchdown reception from third-string quarterback Jalen Milroe. When the pressure was on, he had a spot in the 53 he was battling for. White came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, when he gets his chances, Cody White has made sure to make sure this performance wasn't a fluke. He's been on a streak when he's had his chances. And just like White delivered for the Seahawks, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. This episode's also brought your way by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety style performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Mazda offers more than safety. It's won more 2025 IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same, from metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather. You can feel it the moment you get behind the wheel. The smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda makes even every day drives feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to the first crossover Thursday of the 2025 season. I'm Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. He's Brian Peacock, Locked On 49ers. We don't have to wait for the Seahawks and 49ers to renew their hated rivalry against one another. It'll be on display week 1 at Lumen Field. And really, Brian, a true statement game for both these teams for some different reasons. You know, you look at the Seahawks last year, they won 10 games. They were the only 10-win team that didn't make the postseason last year. From that standpoint, it was a successful first year for Mike McDonald, although he would be the first to tell you, hey, we didn't make the playoffs, so it wasn't successful. San Francisco with the injuries, 6 wins, a disappointing year after being considered a Super Bowl frontrunner going into the season. So both these teams are wanting to make a statement early in the NFC West. And as I mentioned a moment ago, you know, there's some guys that are old standbys that we're going to talk about when we look at matchups in this game, but there's also going to be a lot of new faces that are going to be part of this game. So I want to throw the mic to you first here, and let's start with that young 49ers defense. What is a matchup or two that you are going to be watching here from San Francisco's defensive perspective going up against the Seahawks in this game?
Well, one thing I'd like to hear from you, Corbin, is what the early returns have been on Gray Zabel. And I'm fascinated to see what those matchups looks like, because I think we're going to get to see a first round good on good matchup, especially in those third down situations and in pass rush and pass protection situations with Mykel Williams moving inside and potentially rushing on Gray Zabel. And, you know, they probably won't see much of each other in early downs, but Gray Zabel might see another rookie in CJ West or Alfred Collins. And those guys are both very heavy boys, a little bit different height wise. Alfred Collins, the second rounder, is 6'6", 330 pounds. Apparently there was a report he was up to 350 something pounds and then got to working with Nick Bosa this offseason, got down closer to 320 pounds. So you start eating those omelets with Nick Bosa, a lot of protein and not a lot of carbs, and you can change your body real quick. And then CJ West is just that plugger, just stout, 6'1" and 320 pounds. And so I'm fascinated to watch those matchups. How has Gray Zabel looked? Has he looked like a guy? Because the first round guard, you got to have some serious talent.
Yeah, he's looked the part. He has lived up to the hype to this point. Now, we'll see if what he did in the preseason translates to the regular season. It's a different game when the real bullets start flying in week 1. But you know the athleticism that he displayed at the combine and his pro day workout. It shows up. Like, some guys test really well and then it doesn't show up in pads. it does with Gray Zabel. He is a dancing bear. The guy moves really well. He gets the second level. He loves to finish guys. He's tough. He's really intelligent. And the older players have really rallied around him. How many times do you see an offensive lineman that's a rookie get beat in a one-on-one, and then he goes over and Leonard Williams starts giving him advice? Like, that shows the mutual respect that is there. And Leonard Williams started losing some of those battles to Gray Zabel. So this is a young guy that wants to be really good. He looks like he's going to be a really good pick there for the Seahawks, but we'll see what the returns look like in regular season action. But, man, CJ West was one of my favorite defensive tackles in this draft class. Every time I watch Indiana, I could not stop watching that kid. Him going against Gray Zabel, that would be one heck of a matchup between rookies that are physical, tough, and extremely athletic. That would be a get your popcorn ready matchup to me. Even as rookies in their first game, I think it'd be really exciting. I would have loved to see those guys play in college, but especially now the NFL. That might be the matchup that we see the next several years that has a lot of bearing on upcoming Seahawks 49ers games.
Yeah, that's absolutely a matchup we might be talking about a lot over the course of the next few seasons, hopefully, and hopefully everybody is good because I can't wait to see that type of a matchup. I think we should probably talk a little bit more about the Seahawks offensive line as well, because obviously Nick Bosa, the 49ers' best defensive player, and he's got defensive player of the year type of ability. And I know the Seahawks offensive line has been one of the problems. We did our NFC West preview episode with all the hosts from the West last week or a couple weeks ago when we recorded. And that was one of the big things that you talked about was the improvement of the offensive line. Hopefully for the Seahawks, you're probably hoping for those, bookend tackles to be healthy, which is a big part of blocking Nick Bosa and trying to beat the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, anytime you're playing the 49ers and Nick Bosa's on the field, that is going to be one of the first matchups, if not the first matchup you're looking at, because he's one of those guys that can take over a game and he can destroy a game plan. And the Seahawks, unfortunately, have seen that a number of times from him. But they are going to have Charles Cross back healthy. He had surgery during training camp on a dislocated pointer finger, but he's been practicing the last few weeks. He's going to be good. Abe Lucas, the guy's had such bad luck with his knee the last 2 years. He's finally turned the corner and he's past that. And he's got the athleticism and the nastiness to really thrive in this scheme. Jalen Sundell, another North Dakota State offensive lineman. I feel like there's going to be a lot of those in this game, North Dakota State offensive linemen. But they just keep kicking out really good, well-prepared NFL players. And Jalen Sundell was an undrafted guy that just Wally pipped Oluwatimi. Oluwatimi was going to be the starter and then missed a few weeks, and Jalen Sundell just stole the job from him. And he's another extremely athletic guy, 94th percentile athlete at the center position. So you have him and Zabel, who were roommates in college. So they already have that built-in chemistry. Those two. And maybe what was the biggest surprise to me was Anthony Bradford. I kind of had cast him aside going into this season because he was more of a mauler at LSU and 340 pounds. I thought this is not a good system for him. He showed up about 10 pounds lighter, though. And unlike last year where he just kind of was given the job because nobody else wanted it, nobody else wanted to get the job, he actually earned it this year. He has been really a pleasant surprise, and John Benton's done a lot of good work. You guys know John Benton well. John Benton's done an excellent job coaching up this group. So depth is still something that I think is concerning with this team, but there's actually some positive vibes with this offensive line right now. And what a first test against San Francisco, even with all the new pieces they're going to have, just the history there. This is a good litmus test to see what this young offensive line is going to look like, particularly in the run game where they were so bad last year. I think they're going to be much improved in the run game, but this is going to be the first test to see if that comes to fruition or not.
We might see a lot of blitzing from Robert Saleh too, because of those big defensive linemen the 49ers drafted, and even Michael Williams as a first-round defensive end, you think of like, oh, he's going to turn the corner and be that kind of a speed rusher. That's not his style. He's a power player. So we saw a little bit of the preseason. If the 49ers can't get home with the pass rush and Nick Bosa is having problems doing everything by himself, and I know teams are going to pay extra attention to Nick Bosa, Robert Saleh might be trying to sneak some blitzes in there on teams on key downs too. So that's definitely something to watch for there. I feel like there's a lot more to talk about on the defense side of the ball. Is it going to be the Jackson Smith and Jigba show And he might see another rookie himself in Upton Stout a lot if he's running routes out of the slot.
Yeah, Upton Stout's going to get a really fun first matchup here because you're going to have Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba running routes out of the slot. So that's going to be your first test, dealing with those guys. And maybe Jake Bobo, too. We'll see if he's out of concussion protocol. But that's a totally different style receiver that obviously he's not going to run by people, but he's big. He's a really good route runner. And he boxes guys out like a basketball player to get the football. So they've got a lot of different options they can play inside there. And I'm just wondering about San Francisco's secondary in general. That is really the position group that I look at. And I see some guys like Stout that I think there's obviously potential there, but there's a lot of inexperience there. And the Seahawks, they've got some experienced guys on the outside, and their tight ends are going to be a factor that the secondary is going to have to deal with as well. So this really feels like the most unknown matchup these teams have had for quite some time, just because there's so many new pieces, particularly Seahawks offense against 49ers defense. But I think we also got to flip the script and talk a little bit about San Francisco's offense. And this is where there's some of the old standbys. I still go into this game. I look at Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight, the linebackers, and I still think Mike McDonald's number one goal going into this week. We know there's going to be the pre-snap motion. They're going to be trying to create extra gaps. We've got to be sound with our communication. We got to win those gaps, and we got to win in early downs. And that's been their biggest problem in this losing streak they've had to the 49ers at home. Too many big runs on first and second downs. Not enough true pass rushing situations where they can pin their ears back and get after Brock Purdy. And I feel like if they could get in more of those situations, their edge guys can get some pressure on Brock Purdy. But it's going to start with the defensive tackles up front, Leonard Williams, the all-pro that he should have been last year, Jaron Reed, Byron Murphy II, and those linebackers behind him. Can they control the line of scrimmage and limit those plays on early downs? And I would think that that's San Francisco's biggest key in this game. On the flip side, we want to win those early downs and put Mike McDonald in a bind where he can't be the mad scientist that he wants to be, sprinkling in blitzes and sim pressures and things like that to make life tough on Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And somewhere Kyle Shanahan probably has a whiteboard that he writes a lot of stuff down, and he doesn't write it in something that's erasable, right? It's in permanent ink. It's play balance, stay in front of the sticks, and be good running the football. So then you can run everything else off of that. So teams have to respect you when you put a fullback on the field and Christian McCaffrey on the field, that you can run, you can pass, and you can utilize anything in your offense at just about any time. And Kyle Shanahan loves to run the football and loves to be balanced. And it's been the Kyle Shanahan way to stay in front of the sticks. Not as good of a football team when they have to chase, when they're down, when they got a lot of third and longs, and they don't want to play that way, and they usually don't.
Yeah, and that's going to be the key for the Seahawks, getting them into that position. And really, this is a perfect segue into our final segment. So I think we will continue that discussion here in a moment. But from a matchup perspective, I am looking at the linebackers. Can they build off the way they played the end of last year? Christian McCaffrey did not play in either game last season that these teams played. So you're going to have to deal with his versatility as a running back and a receiver, Brian Robinson being added to the equation. And so, again, that is still the run game for both teams, I think, is just so incredibly important in the matchups that go into that, particularly in the trenches. I'm going to be watching closely, and in part because there's a lot of new faces that we haven't seen for both these teams that are going to make it a little bit of an unknown going into this season opener. We're going to get to those keys to victory, some game plan and stuff coming up next. And of course, our predictions on what's going to play out in week one. We'll get to that coming up next here on our Crossover Thursday. Locked On Seahawks, Locked On 49ers. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props such as how many touchdown passes Sam Darnold will throw against the 49ers, building a same-game parlay with multiple prop bets from the opening week, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping your eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
I want to talk to you guys about my new favorite jeanswear brand, Doer, D-U-E-R, Doer, and they've got a brand new store in San Francisco. I've been living in their performance denim straight jeans, and honestly, they're a game changer because of how good they look and how good they feel. They stretch in all the right directions, and they just opened a brand new store right here in Hayes Valley. I stopped in this weekend. The staff was phenomenal, super helpful. I tried on some more pants that I didn't even know they had, that I hadn't tried on yet. The No Sweat got me a pair of those. I love the shirts, pocket tee as well. And Marcus was phenomenal. And I know a lot of 49ers fans have already been stopping in, so I appreciate that. And if you are in the area in San Francisco, Hayes Valley, 567 Hayes Street, you are going to want to stop into the Doer store. Doer combines the classic jeanswear style with the comfort and performance of athletic wear, the best of both worlds. So I got me some performance denim. I got me some No Sweat pants that are phenomenal, that look great. They feel great. Once you try them, they'll be your go-to. Visit their new store that is now open, 567 Hayes Street in Hayes Valley, and mention our code LOCKEDONSF for 15% off your first order in store or shop online at shopdoer.com/lockedonsf. That's Doer, D-U-E-R, for 15% off.
Welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On 49ers. I'm Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. He's Brian Peacock, Locked On 49ers. Seattle and San Francisco rekindling one of the nastiest rivalries in the NFL in week one. Right out of the gate, we go to Lumen Field, and 49ers fans expected to flock in droves to the stadium. We'll see if that 53% number that's being thrown out there is legitimate or not. I've got sources telling me it's not, but we will see when we get to the stadium on Sunday. There's a lot of anticipation for this game. And hearing from 49ers fans, there's a lot more excitement this year just because of the unknown. I think from Seattle's perspective offensively that you can say that as well. And game one is always a crapshoot, but it feels like more so than ever. On one hand, this, with all the new pieces, it does feel like it's more of a crapshoot and just more of an unknown than we would have. And yet both teams are running similar offenses. Robert Saleh has been in Seattle before. I mean, there's some carryover there that might mitigate some of that too. It's just a really fascinating week one matchup.
A lot of familiarity, but a lot of unknowns. You know, there's really a delineation in Sam Darnold's career too. It was like his time before Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco and his time after. And he's looked like a completely different guy since he came to the San Francisco 49ers. And I expect to see a really good Sam Darnold out there. I don't know how you feel about Geno Smith versus Sam Darnold, if it's an upgrade or a downgrade. I think it's close enough, and I think there's probably a good opportunity for there to be a better team around, especially up front around Sam Darnold, which will make the results better for the Seahawks this year, even if he's not as good of a quarterback as Geno Smith. But I do think that Sam Darnold can play, and yeah, the styles, and they both want to be tough football teams. They both want to be rugged on the defensive side of the ball. They both want to run the ball, and we'll see if they're able to do it. And for the 49ers, one of the biggest keys, if you're talking about keys to victory, is starting fast. And they need to start fast this season with some of these unknowns. And they need to start fast, I think, in this game and make sure that they're not playing from behind on the road early. So that's got to be my number one, not only key for this game, but just key for the first quarter of the season for the 49ers is, can they start fast and not be a team that, you know, if we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like, they better know what it's going to look like, right? And if they're a little bit unsure, then that might be a bad sign for how the 49ers season is going to go this year.
Yeah, I'm going to get more specific here. I think they need to start fast in the red zone because I feel like that is really what held this team back last year. And I know a lot of fans wanted to point at Geno Smith because he led the league in red zone interceptions. I've made this argument for months. Number of those picks were not his fault. It was really poor route distribution and spacing, and that's why Ryan Grubb is down at Alabama. That's one of the reasons that he's there. Their offense was not an NFL-style offense. They put Geno Smith in a really hard position, and they couldn't run the ball in the red zone either. They are going to be able to run the football, and if they struggle early, they're not going to give up on it. They're going to continue to run the football. They've got the fullback incorporated in Clint Kubiak's offense. Robbie Oots, all 275 pounds of him, ready to go lead block. It's going to be a different identity, but I want to see this team when they get to the red zone finish. You can't leave points on the board against any team, but especially the 49ers. That has been one of their Achilles heels. I can't tell you how many times they've gotten into the red zone at Lumen Field in the last 4 years when they've been playing the 49ers, and they have not gotten points, let alone a touchdown. They've not gotten points. You have got to finish drives at minimum with field goals, but they got to find a way to turn it into touchdowns. And then on the other side, they've got to be able to hold the 49ers to field goals. And I think that was the big difference in that game they had in Santa Clara last year. They were able to get some of those stops when the 49ers had moved the football and forced them into field goal situations. So I look at the red zone and more so than other games. In this matchup, I think it's key for the Seahawks. And the other thing that I'm going to mention, sorry, Plaxico Burress, but I'm going to continue using this. Do not Plaxico yourself in this game. Seattle at Lumen Field. I don't know what it has been. I'm thinking it was 3 years ago that they had some momentum at the end of the half, and then Travis Homer fumbled on a kick return. And then the 49ers scored a touchdown right before the half. And then all that momentum was gone. It seems like every time that these two teams have played at Lumen Field the last 4 years, there's just some nightmarish play or two that turns into points instantly, or it's a broken coverage or thing. They can't beat themselves by shooting themselves in the foot. And they've done that way too much in these home games where the 49ers are good enough to beat you without those. You don't need to give them gifts. And so Mike McDonald, I think, is going to be going to this game. He's going to be preaching that. I know it's week one. Mistakes are going to be made, but at the same time, like, dude, we can't go out there and give up free points and give up key field position to these guys and expect to win. So that's going to be critical, playing clean football and not giving up points off turnovers, sloppy ones, especially like they've had on special teams pretty much every time these teams play the last 4 years.
One more quick note, and I know we're running out of time here, but just that Mike McDonald defense and how it's come together for him in year two. And I think there's a big opportunity for the Seahawks to be really good on that side of the football. So I think we kind of know what to expect from the 49ers offense. A lot of holdover players, that Seattle Seahawks defense, and, you know, some multiple looks. And I can't wait to see how it all comes together. You got Reed and you got Williams and you got Murphy in the middle. And you mentioned the linebackers earlier, but, you know, I'm looking at the PFF grades right now, and a lot of highly graded players in the secondary, obviously led by Witherspoon there. So that's going to be the good on good. That's going to be a lot of fun with that Niners offense against the Seattle Seahawks defense, even if there are some unknowns when the other units are out there on the field. And does that Seahawks defense start to look like, you know, something that was built in the Ravens image and is a powerhouse unit potentially in the NFL?
Yeah, that's going to be what's so exciting to see from this team, just because you just don't see continuity like that very often with 13 of your top 14 guys coming back, and then you add talent on top of it. And I can't wait to see what Nick Eamon-Wari looks like. That is going to be my week one curiosity. I want to see how Seattle's going to deploy him. How different does it look than what we've seen in training camp practices when Mike McDonald doesn't have to be guarded anymore? Is he not going to throw everything out there because it's only week one? Like, I'm very fascinated about that. And let's get to the predictions now, because look, when these teams get together recently, there haven't been as many close games. And a lot of it has been because the Seahawks, again, they have made so many self-inflicted mistakes that have blown up and turned into points. Like that Homer fumble, Seattle was within 7 points. And then suddenly that was a 10 to 14 point swing right before half. And things like that have happened pretty much every time they've been at Lumen Field. I feel like this is going to be, just because of all the uncertainty on both teams, I feel like this is going to be one of those weird week one games that maybe isn't pretty a lot of the time, but ends up being a close game that has a wild finish. So I think Seattle with their defense having the continuity they have, I think Seattle escapes with the win. But this might be a game where playing in week one benefits them, because I do think San Francisco's got a lot of young guys by second part of the season could really be hitting their stride. I can see San Francisco absolutely winning if their run game is rolling. I think Seattle ekes this one out 27-23.
I was actually a little bit surprised the 49ers on the road were favored by, I think it was a field goal. And for those listeners that might have listened to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show this week, this game was part of our 6-pack, and we made some predictions. You said that it might come down to special teams. Jake Moody's going to be a big factor in this game, I have a feeling, for the 49ers. And I don't think the Niners are going to be a team you want to play in December. And this season is going to be bookended by Niners Seahawks, by the way. We get that rivalry uniform game in week 18, and they won't see each other for 17 weeks in between, which is going to be really interesting. And I don't want to see the Niners, I don't think, in December or early January, but this is the right time, I think, to catch the 49ers in a little bit of a transitional phase. And I predict some weirdness on special teams as well as being part of it. And I think I'm going to go Seahawks by 3, even though I know my listeners aren't going to like it.
Oh, boy. Well, the Seahawks, both of us picking them. So not the first time. There's been times I picked the 49ers to win this matchup as well. But I think this is going to be one of the more intriguing games, not just because of the rivalry history, but I think both these teams could be really good this year. I really do. I could also see a case where both teams don't make the playoffs potentially, because this is just such a wide open division. And we're going to learn quite a bit about both these teams in this opener, which is going to say a lot about the NFC West and where things may be heading in this division. It should be a fun one. I'm Corbin Smith. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. He's Brian Peacock. You can follow him at BD Peacock. Make sure to check out our Friday shows coming up as we head into this opener. Locked on Seahawks, Locked on 49ers. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the weekend. First weekend of NFL football. Go Hawks, go Niners. Thanks for listening in.